Hey, I'm Allison. I'm a literacy specialist for K-2 and the author of the blog Learning at the Primary Pond. In this video, we're going to chat about what effective grammar instruction can look like for K-2. And honestly, it might be a little bit different from what you had as a student or from what you're currently doing with your students. But everything that I'm going to share here is not only engaging for students, but it's also based on research. And if you're curious in learning more about .com does have multiple grammar posts, so after the video you're welcome to go check that out and read all about the research. But tonight what we're going to do is I'm going to share my three-part approach with you, and this is this approach can be applied to really like whatever reading series or program you might be using or whatever writing program you might be using. But then I'm also going to actually show you like what a full week of grammar instruction might look like for kindergarten. I'm going to show you a full week for first grade, and I'm going to show you a full week for second grade, because I think that'll really help take what we're talking about here with the three-part approach and make it concrete. That is my goal. If you're joining me, I would love to know what grade you teach, but also how much time per week you have to teach grammar, because so many teachers I've talked to, and I've been in this position myself too, they like hardly have any time to teach grammar, or they feel like what time they have in their literacy block needs to go to other things like reading or writing. So I totally get that. But fortunately, what I'm going to show you today can be integrated, a lot of it, into what you're already doing with reading and writing, because the research shows that when we take our grammar instruction and integrate it into real context, aka reading and writing, that is more effective anyway. So if you're pressed for time, no worries. I would love to know in the comments how much time you do have per week, and then also if you would share your grade level, that would be wonderful. But again, what we're talking about tonight can really be applied no matter if you have, you'll need more than 5 minutes, but if you have, I don't know, like 15 minutes a week, or if you have 2 hours a week, I imagine you might not have 2 hours, but it really can be applied in a variety of situations. All right, so let's start talking about the three-stage approach. And when I'm saying stages, it's basically the gradual release of responsibility. And what we're doing is trying to get our kids to notice correct grammar in context. We're trying to give them some practice with it, often at the sentence level. And then ultimately, we're trying to get them to apply it to their writing, because that's the whole goal, right? We're not trying to get them to learn grammar just for grammar's sake. Eventually, we want them to become strong writers. That's a long way down the road for some of our littles, kinder, first, and second grade, but we've got to start somewhere, right? So our ultimate goal in stage 3 will be getting kids to apply what they're learning to their writing. If you're just joining us, would love to know what grade you teach, and I would love to know how many minutes-ish per week you have to teach grammar. All right, so let's start talking about stage 1. Stage 1 I call explore. And in this stage, we are looking at the grammar concept, whether it's verbs or commas in a series or correct punctuation or capitalization. We're looking at it in context. So I'll always have some example sentences, and you'll see that in a moment when I start walking you through the actual kinder, first, and second grade lessons. You'll see that what we do is we take multiple sentences, and I ask the kids, what do you notice about these sentences? What do they have in common? The brain loves to look for patterns. So if you present, for example, multiple sentences, like we're going to do in a little bit, with question marks, right? What do they have in common? We can talk about the question mark, why it's used. We're looking for correct usage of grammar in context. We're also going to find correct examples of correct examples. We're also going to find examples of correct use in context. So that might be maybe a shared reading book that you're doing, or a passage that you're reading with the class. Again, we're drawing their attention to correct usage, because if we're doing something like DOL, daily oral language, where it's just sentence fixing, we're showing them lots of incorrect examples. But this stage is not about that. We're not looking at incorrect examples. We're showing our students what, professional writers do, what adult writers do, how they use these conventions correctly. In stage 1, sometimes too, and I think I may have an example or two for you tonight, I will do some hands-on activities or some movement activities just to get them, up, moving around. Maybe there's parts of a sentence and I have some kids in the class, work together to build the sentence. we're generally just exploring the concept. And again, it'll be really concrete for you when I start going through these sample weeks. If you're just joining me now, would love to know what grade you teach and also how many-ish minutes per week you have to teach grammar. All right, so stage 2 is practice. This is, again, really like the guided release of responsibility. I know you probably, I'm not sure if you can see below here, so I'll just read it to you. In stage 2, there's a lot of modeling and writing sentences. So you are modeling how to write, for example, a sentence with a question mark, or a sentence with adjectives if you're working on adjectives. And then eventually the kids also write their own sentence. Now at the kindergarten level, they might not be doing too much writing yet, so it looks very different. But again, we're going to look at that in a moment so you can see exactly what it might look like. The kids might be playing, I know you can't see this down here, but the kids might be playing games. We might be doing some centers, taking what they've learned during the explore phase and really practicing with it. At this point, though, we're not yet expecting them to apply it to their writing because that is the most challenging way for kids to work with a grammar concept. It's what we're working toward, but we're not going to right away just start asking our kids to, for example, at the, like a very simple level, like capitalize the first letter in a sentence. Yes, we work on it in writing, but we need to explore, we need a little practice before we expect them to do it when they're writing a story or writing a nonfiction book. All right, so that was stage 1 and stage 2. Now let's talk about stage 3. And stage 3, stage 3 is what we're working toward. This is the application stage. My paper will not stay up. This is the application stage where kids are going to take, I'll just rip it off. There we go. They're going to take what we've been practicing in stages 1 and 2, and they're going to apply it to their actual writing. But of course, they're not going to be ready until we do a lot of modeling. So you might have your normal writing lessons, and you're taking, for example, adjectives, and you're modeling, hey, I'm writing this nonfiction book. I'm going to use adjectives to, describe an elephant or describe whatever topic I'm writing about. So you're modeling, maybe there's some sort of shared writing opportunity where as a class, you're writing, for example, a nonfiction text, and the kids are supplying adjectives for you to write into the piece. So there's going to be some guided practice. And then eventually the kids are going to try it out in their writing. So you might say, okay, take a piece that's finished or almost finished and see where you can add an adjective. You'd probably be more specific than that. And it depends on the genre that you're working on. But we want our kids to take what they're learning and actually try it out in their writing. If applicable, you might also want to do some partner editing where, let's say you've been working on like possessive nouns and the kids have written some things with possessive nouns. They're learning to use the apostrophe. In a partner situation, they're reading each other's writing or they're reading it aloud to each other, and their partner is giving them feedback on the correctness of whatever grammar convention you've been working on. So again, the stages are stage 1, explore, stage 2, practice, and then stage 3, apply. And now let's talk a little bit about the timing, and I apologize that some of this is cut off. So stage 1, in stage 1, this really depends on what the concept is. If it's something very simple that the kids have worked with before in previous grades, you might just do one little introduction lesson. It might be 10 minutes and that's it. Some other things, like for example, contractions, possessive nouns, those are more challenging. So they are going to take a little bit more time for your kids to be exploring. And again, in that stage, we're finding examples that are correct in context and they're just kind of learning, but we're not expecting them to apply it yet. Stage 2 is more practice. That here, I wrote 2 to 4 lessons or activities. They don't have to be long. You'll see exactly what I mean when I start going through the full weeks of grammar instruction in a second. And then stage 3, practice. You can't see it, but I wrote 1 to 2, like lessons or activities, usually 2. And after. So when kids are applying it in their writing, we all know that it's probably not going to be instantly absorbed and they're doing it perfectly thereafter, right? There's going to be a learning curve. They're going to make mistakes. Curious if you've ever had the issue where you teach something and you feel like the kids really get it, but then they're not applying it to their writing. I know that's happened to me many, many times. So stage 3, yes, you'll have some specific lessons or things you're working on that focus on the grammar skill or convention, but really my expectation is that I'm going to have to keep coming back, circling back, and revisiting it throughout the year because application is the hardest part and it does take a lot of work for kids to be able to apply it. All right, so those are the 3 stages. And like I said, now we're going to go through 3 full weeks, basically. 1 kindergarten, 1 first grade example, and 1 second grade example of what that might look like kind of on a daily basis. And I forget, at the very beginning, no, I didn't say this yet. At the very beginning, I was talking about how you might be pressed for time. If you're joining me now, I would love to know what grade you teach, and then also how many minutes per week-ish you have for grammar instruction. Would love for you to share that in the comments. But you don't necessarily have to have 1 grammar lesson per day for this stuff to work. You'll see in the example lessons, some of them are very quick. They can be integrated into like a shared reading lesson that you're already doing, or you take 5 minutes of your writing time. So this does not have to be long, drawn out, lots of work, right? The stuff I'm showing you is from Grammar Alive, my grammar program. It can be used daily if you want to, but it doesn't have to be. And there's a lot of optional activities you can kind of pick and choose. All right, so let's go ahead and get into these lessons. We are going to start with kindergarten. And I'm going to post right here. Yeah, I'll put that there. I'm going to post the skill that we're working on so you can tell. So this is week 14 of my Kindergarten Grammar Live program. I do have a special link and a code for you, by the way. But this is Kindergarten week 14. We are working on writing questions with question marks. So this is our focus skill for the week. And again, we're going to follow the 3-part situation, but with kindergarten, it does look a little bit different and it's briefer. So part A, this might be like a 5 to 10 minute lesson. And the first thing I'm going to do for this lesson is I am just going to show them these sentences. Hopefully you can see that. Yep, I think we're good. All right. So for this lesson, I would just start by saying there's a pattern, there's something that's similar, something that's the same with all of these sentences, and then I would read them to the kids, right? And we would probably read them together, and then I would say, I wonder what's the same, do you know? And I might have them like turn and tell their partner what they notice, and did I grab my highlighter? To get a highlighter. After that, hopefully they would come up with the word question mark, or they would at least notice that there's something that's the same at the end of these sentences. And then I would say, very good, this is a question mark. These sentences end with question marks because they're questions. And then I would probably point out how our voice goes up at the end of a sentence, right? What is your name? Our voice goes up. Where is the library? We're asking something, right? So we talked about what the question is. And then after that, what I like to do is actually have them practice air writing a question. So take our 2 fingers out. I'm going to write one on the board, right? So here's a question, kind of talk them through how I do it. And then everybody takes their 2 fingers and we write a question, okay? So obviously I sped that up a little bit more than it really would be in real life, but that's a pretty quick lesson, just an introduction to question marks. And honestly, for the explore phase in kindergarten, that's all I'm going to do. Pretty simple, right? We just talk about what it is. I might post this on the board, you know, leave it up there all week, and that's it. Pretty quick and simple, just the introduction. Here it is, and then we're moving on. All right, so the next day, or maybe a couple of days after that, we're going to do some activities to help them practice what we've been talking about. This was the explore phase. Now we're moving into practice. Hey, Julie, I do have 2nd grade grammar. Yes, there should be a link in that post if you want to check it out. We are doing right now kindergarten, and then I'm going to do a 1st grade week, and then I'm going to do a 2nd grade week. All right. So another thing I might do with my kiddos after we do that original activity is just this little find the question marks bingo dabber thing. Very simple. I'm just going to review what is this called. It's a question mark. We're going to draw it in the air. And then I'm scared it's going to like dribble down the page if I do this, but they're going to take bingo dabbers, or you could just have them do highlighters or some kind of colored marker and like dab on the page to find all the question marks. Not sure how big it is for you on your screen, but it basically just has all different types of punctuation marks and letters and symbols. So their job is to distinguish between those symbols and point out the question marks. So again, very quick. This could be something that's a center activity. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a full-blown lesson or anything like that. Very quick. Throughout the week, I might be looking in shared reading books that we're doing. Hey, can you find any questions? Let's, draw the question mark in the air, just stuff like that to link what we've been talking about to the activities we're already doing. Another day we might do this show me your question mark game. So every kiddo in the class is going to get a little card like this. They're just question marks. And I'm going to say questions out loud one at a time. And I'll say, okay, when my question is over, hold up your question mark, because a question mark goes at the end of a question or whatever. So I like to make it something related to my kids. So what is Julian's favorite color? Then I'll pause and they hold up the question mark. It's kind of driving home the point that a question mark goes at the end of a sentence. We can also talk about how our voice goes up as well. So that, again, very quick. It probably takes more time to pass them out than it does to do the activity. Just a few minutes. You can kind of even do this as a transition activity. It's not a full-blown lesson. Tisha, yes, hopefully I was having some tech issues earlier. Hopefully everything is smooth sailing and there should be a replay. Lori, yes, the stuff that I'm showing you right now is in Kindergarten Grammar Alive. There is a special link in this post with a coupon code that will work through April 2nd, 2021. But yes, I'm going to show you Kinder, I'm going to show you first, and I'm going to show you second. All right, so this was just one quick little activity. And then another thing that we're probably going to do is we're going to do some kind of interactive writing. That could even be part of our morning message. It could be part of something else that we're doing. And in interactive writing, you share the pen with kids. And so I usually do it whole group. It could be done small group, but you say, okay, I want to write the sentence, I don't know, like, when is lunch? Something like that. When is lunch, right? Lunch might be a little bit hard with the NCH at the end. So when is, I don't know, I can't think of a good sentence for kindergarten. We'll just do something really simple, like what is it? Those would hopefully be words that the kids would know how to spell, or they could at least listen for the sounds with it and is. So I'd say, okay, we're going to write the question, what is it? And so I'm asking them, what goes first? I might have a kid come up and do the capital letter. I might do some of the writing. They're doing some of the writing. They could even be doing it on their own little whiteboards on their lap. So we could be working as a class, but more kids get to participate in the writing experience. Yes, when they're volunteers coming up, but if they have their little whiteboard and they're writing along with you, so it could be interactive that way. But whatever you want to do, we're going to write a question, and there's going to be a question mark at the end. And again, pretty quick, not like a full lesson or anything. It can be part of something you're already doing for morning message or writing, but it's that interactive practice with writing a question and using a question mark. All right, so those are some different options for the practice component. Again, all of those were pretty quick, not spending a lot of time on it at the kindergarten level. And then we have the application. So this can be tricky, especially with kinders. One of my favorite ways to get them to apply something, though, is through a dictation. You may already be doing this as part of your phonics program. I know from Sounds to Spelling, my phonics program, we do dictation. But even if you're not, it's a really valuable opportunity for the kids to practice lots of things, but it's also a great way to see if they're catching on to these grammar skills. So for our dictation for this week, I might have them write, what is it? So just using that sentence example again. It's not going to be the same sentence that I did in interactive writing. I'm just having trouble coming up with kindergarten appropriate questions because those question words are hard. It could be who is it if you've taught the word who before. But anyway, you tell the kids what they're supposed to write. You may give them either a whiteboard or some kind of paper, so like half sheet so that you can see how they did. You say the sentence, repeat it a couple of times, and the kid's job is to write it. And then because it's a question, you get to see if they got the question mark correct. So that's pretty much what it would look like for kindergarten. This could be 1 week. It could be, spread out over 2 weeks. But we started with the example sentences. If you remember, let me pull these out real quick. That was just kind of one 5 to 10 minute lesson. I talked about using the Find the Question Mark sheet. As we're reading during the week, we're looking in shared reading books for examples of questions and question marks and getting them to use that language. We talked about the Give Me a Question Mark game where you're saying questions and kids are holding up a question mark. You could also play it if your kids are really catching on. You could play it where you say a statement or a telling sentence or a question and they have to decide if it's a question. That's something you could do as well. We talked about the interactive writing, and then so that was the practice piece, and then the application would be where kids are doing the dictation, they're writing a sentence with a question mark at the end. So you're seeing if they can use it, and then eventually we'll see if they can apply it to their writing, right? Kids might not be writing tons of questions depending on what kind of writing you're working on. But if they can at least do it in the dictation, then that's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. All right, so that was kindergarten. Again, that was part of Kindergarten Grammar Alive, week 14. The link to that should be in that post. So now we're going to move on to first grade, but do feel free in the comments to let me know if you have any questions about that. Oh, I did bring like 2 other things to just show you as examples for kinder. Grammar at the kinder level is just a little bit different. Like we might be doing things like talking about opposites. This towel is wet, this towel is dry. This is also from Grammar Alive. We might be doing things like acting out verbs. So kindergarten at the I keep saying it the wrong way. Grammar at the kindergarten level is just a little bit different. It's not necessarily as structured as it is with first and second grade, but that is an example of what it might look like for 1 week. All right, let's move on to our first grade week. If you're just joining me, I would love to know what grade you teach and how many minutes-ish you have per day to teach grammar, because this is all about making the most of your time, following the research, keeping it engaging for the kids, but also blending this into what you're already doing. If you notice with the kindergarten stuff, I was telling you, hey, take your shared reading books that you're already reading. You could do some during writing instruction. You can make this work in your literacy block. All right, so for first grade, we are going to do using adjectives to describe nouns. And again, this is just like the I can statement that you might want to have up on the board. And one thing that I really like to do when I'm introducing adjectives for the first time is to place interesting items on tables. This year, obviously, it's a little bit different, but I'm talking about a normal year. You could modify this, of course, this year. But in an ordinary year, I like to place interesting objects on the tables in my classroom, and the kids will rotate around. And before they rotate to look at the objects, I'll just say, hey, I want you, as you're looking at this object, to ask yourself questions like, how big is it? What color is it? What shape is it? How would you describe it? And so from there, they either need to chat with their group mates that they're rotating with, or if you feel like it won't take forever, you can have one writer of the group actually jot down the words that the kids are saying. But again, it can just be done orally. Usually I do it orally just to save a little time. So they've got different objects on the table. I ask them to think about it and describe it to their teammates, their little group mates. They rotate around, and then we come back to the rug or the whole group. And at that point, I ask them, okay, what words did you use to describe, like if it's a special rock, this rock? And they tell me, and I write it on the board or I write it on chart paper, what words did you use to describe this thing? And I'll just write whatever they say. And then at that point I said, wow, you thought of a lot of different describing words to describe these things on the table. And I would say, guess what? These are adjectives. Can you say adjectives? I say adjectives. I say, you already know a ton of adjectives. Adjectives are describing words that we see in books and we use them in our writing. So this week we're going to be learning more adjectives and how to use them to make our writing even more interesting. So that's basically it. That's a little bit more involved for the explore portion of the series. That might take like 20 minutes if you want to give it a while. You could probably do it in 15 minutes. You could also just bring a couple objects and have everybody look and you write. However you want to do it, it just engages the kids and you're not necessarily telling them the word adjectives. They're probably able to come up with a lot on their own. You're writing them, and then you introduce the concept of adjective, and that's it for that particular lesson. Next up, and I would still consider this to be the explore part of the week. You could potentially do this like on the same day if you wanted to. It could be another day. This part is very quick. You display these sentences on the board. You read them aloud to the kids, and they read them as well. And then by this point, at least in Grammar Alive, the kids already know what nouns are. So I will ask them, like for this blanket is very soft. Okay, what's the noun? So we're going to underline the noun. And I'll say, okay, what word describes blanket? So soft. So we're gonna draw a circle and then just draw a little arrow to show that soft is describing blanket. So we would do that for the following sentences as well. There's more than one adjective here. There's more than one adjective here. And I would link that back to the activity that I would do with all the little different materials on the table. And that would probably, it could take 10 minutes, but probably 5 minutes. Okay, so meanwhile that week, as we're reading books, this could be for science, for social studies, for reading, whatever, I'm pointing out adjectives to the kids. So they're seeing more examples than just this. And again, it doesn't have to be like a whole drawn out separate lesson. You're doing it in the context of what you're already doing. It's very quick. Hey, did you notice the author used this adjective? What does it describe? And then you just keep on moving. So it doesn't have to be, again, a whole long drawn out thing. Now here's an optional activity that you could have the kids do for independent work if you wanted to. This I would still consider, I have it in the, whoops, throwing my magnet here. I have it in the explore portion of the lesson, but it could probably also go for practice. But in this activity, kids are classifying words as either adjectives or not adjectives. So they have, they just have like a half sheet of words. You read them to them, but they're supposed to be mostly first grade friendly. And then they cut them apart and they sort them. Are they adjectives or are they not adjectives? And that could just be a center activity. You introduce it and then hopefully they can do it on their own. You could save this for the practice portion of the week, but it kind of depends on how kids are doing with adjectives and if they're familiar with them already. Another thing you can do could be a whole class thing and then maybe you have them do it independently, is an adjective scavenger hunt. So you might have this up on the board throughout the week, and as the kids are helping you find and notice adjectives in the context, again, of the text that you're already reading, you could be keeping a list. You could also eventually have kids keep their own list. Again, we're looking for real examples of real text, so as they're reading, they may be able to find some adjectives to add to their own list. So that is another option. All the stuff that I'm talking about, with the exception of like that introduction lesson and looking at the sentences, all of these are optional, right? Like those are little activities that can be added into centers, but you don't necessarily have to do everything that's included in Grammar Alive. I just wanted to provide options for you. All right, next up, we're gonna move into, so we were in the explore phase. Now we're moving into stage 2, which would be a little bit more practice, getting the kids to apply it a little bit more, even though they're not ready to apply to their own writing. So let me show you this little chart. Okay, so with this chart, usually what I do is if I have a group of kids whose oral language is pretty strong, I will recreate this little chart on chart paper or a version of it, and it just says adjectives can tell color, size, shape and pattern, texture, personality, sound, and taste. You could even eliminate some of these columns if you want to keep it a little bit more simple, totally up to you. But I'll recreate this on chart paper and I will have the kids brainstorm different words they know to describe color, size, shape, and pattern. And so we will work on this as a class. Now in the actual Grammar Alive itself, there are some other options too. I have it, if you want to skip that part, I have one filled out. I have an even more challenging with some great vocabulary words for really advanced first graders filled out. So you can use one of these, but if your kids' oral language is pretty high, it can be great to just have a class chart of this, and you can of course add on to it as the year goes on. So that could be one activity or one whole group thing if you want to do it. And then we would take that another day and we would write some example sentences. So we'd have this filled out, or I'd have this, whichever I wanted to do, and I would model writing a sample sentence, and I would probably choose something in the classroom. So I might write the board, like the whiteboard is long, okay? Now, you are then going to want your kids, of course, to identify, okay, what is the verb here? What is the, not the verb, the noun, what is the adjective, right? So after you talk about your sentence, you are going to want your kids to write their own sentences. And a great thing to do is just have them talk to a partner and plan their sentence. And you can have them use this same sentence frame that you use. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You can give them a frame that's just the blank is blank. This is especially helpful if your kids happen to be English language learners. So you just the blank, and then the kids can copy that and they fill in the blanks, and they can choose whatever they want. It could be something in the classroom, it could be something in their house, something special to them, but they can use this chart that either you created or you're providing. They can use that as a support. So they're writing the sentences, but they have a lot of support. They're talking to a partner, they have the sentence frame if you want to give it to them, and they also have this chart. So they're using adjectives, but with a lot of support. So that could be one little activity. Again, it could be very quick and simple, could even be on whiteboards, totally up to you, but not taking up a lot of time. All right, so next up, we have a little activity that could be done as a center, independent work. For this activity, the kids, where's my little magnet? Here it is. The kids are gonna have pictures of things. You can have them color them: giraffe, pencil, ice cream, basketball. You're gonna read these adjectives to them, and then they cut them out and they paste them under the correct item. So for pencil, they might put thin, they might put sharp. For a giraffe, they might put tall. And again, you're reading the words to them, but they're matching the adjectives to the nouns. And as you're doing this, of course, you're using the word adjective and you're using the word nouns while you're working with them on it. Another fun little activity, again, this stuff is kind of optional. It just depends on how much your kids need and how much practice you want to give them. This is great if you've done any like character traits. Adjectives that describe me, so they like fill in their little body to draw themselves, and then they list some adjectives. And again, you might be able to use the chart that you created. There's some personality like traits that I've listed here that they could use, or they can come up with their own. But again, totally optional, just another way for them to practice adjectives. All right, so that was the practice phase, and now we're going to get into the apply phase. So remember, explore, they were just kind of learning about them, seeing examples of adjectives. In practice, they were really working with adjectives, writing an example sentence with lots of support. And then in the application phase, they are going to take what they've learned and they're going to apply it to their writing, but they're first going to see you do it. So in Grammar Alive, like with the lesson I have here, it will tell you if you're working on narrative writing, here's how you can get your kids to apply it. So for this example, with adjectives, it says when you write a story, adjectives can tell your reader what your character looks like, or you could choose what the setting looks like. So then you could model that if you're working on narrative writing. You're taking what you're already doing and you're bringing adjectives to it. So you're not creating a whole new lesson. You're not creating more work for yourself. You're capitalizing upon what you're already doing to bring in this concept. You could be doing how-to writing. When you teach your reader how to do something, you can use adjectives to describe the materials your reader will need. For example, you will need large paper, 5 crayons, and glue. Informational writing, when you teach your reader about a topic, you can use adjectives to help your reader understand what your topic looks like, sounds like, smells like, feels like, or even tastes like. Rabbit, for example, rabbits have soft fur. Their fur can be black, brown, or white. Or if they're doing opinion writing, I know it's a lot to take in. I'm just kind of trying to show examples of how you would apply this to different types of writing. When you're writing to share your opinion, use adjectives to show your reader just how awesome or not awesome your topic is. This type of ice cream is cool and delicious. The movie was fun and interesting. So Grammar Alive will tell you, that's what the link in this post is, Grammar Alive will tell you how to take what you're doing and apply the concept to it. So you might be doing some modeling, some shared writing, whatever kind of writing you're doing, and then you ask the kids, and it usually works best if you take a piece that's finished or almost finished, you ask them to go back and work with a partner for that support to figure out where they might add at least one adjective. So they're actually applying it to their writing, which again is the whole purpose. So that would be the application stage, stage 3. And again, like I said before, that's not probably something we're going to be like one lesson and done, right? You're going to have to keep talking about it with them, even if it's not your focus. Keep talking about it with them as they're working in different genres. Oh, how could you use adjectives? Remember how we can use adjectives to make our writing more interesting? You're just going to have to keep bringing it in. All right, so that was first grade. Now let's go ahead and move into the second grade example. Thank you, Emmy, I appreciate that. So now we're going to look at an example week of second grade Grammar Alive, and I chose a different skill just to give you a sense of that. Just like with kindergarten and first grade, we're going to move through the phases of explore, practice, and apply. So this skill is one that can be a little bit tricky for second graders, even older kids I've seen. So that's actually why I chose it. And our I can write possessive nouns with apostrophes. So Lisa's cat, the tree's trunk. So let's start with the explore part of the lesson, or not part of the lesson, but part of the week. And again, everything I'm showing you, you could put it in 1 week. It could take a little more, but you're not necessarily having to do a grammar lesson every single day. Integrate as much as possible into the reading and writing that you're already doing with your kiddos. Thank you, Lori. You're so sweet. All right, so here's how I like to introduce possessive nouns with apostrophes. I like to have a couple of volunteers bring something that's theirs to the front of the class. So it might be like some kid's backpack, or some kid might bring their pencil box. And I might say to the kids, you know, this backpack belongs to our friend Juan. We can say, this is Juan's backpack. Can you say that with me? This is Juan's backpack. And so then I would write that on the board. So I'd write, this is Juan's backpack, just to have an example. And I'd say, you know, do you see this apostrophe here? I should probably actually write it. This is part of my handwriting. Got a strange angle going on. This is Juan's, I'll just say bag. Say, okay, do you see this apostrophe here? Or I might just ask them, do you know what that's called? Do you know what it's for? And I'd say this is a possessive noun. Just kind of leave it at that. I might have another volunteer come up, write another example sentence, and again say this is an apostrophe. It's showing us that the bag belongs to Juan. So after that, which wouldn't take very long at all, then I would bring out some more example sentences. All right. So here are my example sentences. And again, this is just the explore phase. We're not expecting kids to identify apostrophes or know what a possessive noun is yet. But I'll read them the sentences, and we'll read them together. Mina's puppy is 5 weeks old. Got another Juan. Here are Juan's gym shoes. So, you know, who does the puppy belong to? Belongs to Mina. How do we know that? Because we've got the apostrophe S. This is a possessive noun. Now try to get them to say the words possessive noun repeatedly. Juan's gym shoes, we got the apostrophe, we got the S. Who do the gym shoes belong to? Juan. Obviously, that's a very sped up version of this lesson, but again, this is kind of like the foundational lesson where I introduce the concept. And then after that, I might do a few other activities. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the same day, but just that week to get them exploring the concept of possessive nouns. Again, throughout the week, I'm looking for examples in real text of, you know, here's a possessive noun in this book that we're reading. Here's a possessive noun in this passage. Kids need to see correct examples of grammar concepts in context. They need to see how, you know, writers use them, proficient adult writers use them. They need to see those correct examples. So we'd be looking for those in context. And then I also like to do this little activity where we compare sentences that have possessive nouns versus sentences that don't have possessive nouns. So it's probably pretty small for you on your screen, so I'll read it to you. Here is Ming's baseball glove. Here is the baseball glove that belongs to Ming. My cousin's house is far away. The house where my cousin lives is far away. So they're comparing sentences, and I'm asking them, like, what's the difference? Which sentence has the possessive noun? Why do you think an author might use a possessive noun? This activity, I know again it's kind of probably small for you to see, but this activity drives home the point that possessive nouns can make writing more concise. They can make things easier to explain. So like the sentence, where is Cecilia's sleeping bag? versus where is the sleeping bag that belongs to Cecilia, the first one with the possessive noun is a little bit shorter. Possessive nouns can make it easier to say things, even though both are correct. So that's something we might do. Again, that can be very quick. Like this is almost a transition activity, right? You're just reminding the kids, hey, this is what we're working on. Let's talk about these sentences, and then you move on. And no prep for you, right? You literally just print out this paper and then you're good to go. An independent activity that I like to have the kids do is to match pictures to sentences. Okay, so these are written so that second graders should be able to read them, most second graders. And so they have to cut apart these sentences and then they have to match them to the pictures. So for example, it says, I saw Greg's books on the table, and then they have to find the picture of the books on the table and they have to match them. It could just be something where they're like moving them around on the table, or it could be they glue them down, totally up to you. But again, could be an independent activity. They are reading lots and lots of possessive nouns. Another thing you could have them do is you could have them highlight or underline or even write on a different sheet of paper the actual possessive noun. So yes, they're reading them, but now they're also highlighting the exact possessive noun. So you could take it a step further. All right, so that is usually what I will do for the explore stage. And then next we're gonna move into a little bit more practice. And this is a cute activity that I like to have my second graders do, and it's a class book. We don't do a lot of class books in second grade, but this is one that they've enjoyed doing. It's called A Few of Our Favorite Things, and you don't necessarily have to have the kids bring in something. This year it might not be practical, but in a normal year, I might each have them bring something. What I tell the parents, there's like a parent letter in Grammar Alive for you, but what I tell them is something special from home, but definitely not something like priceless or really expensive or something problematic if it were lost, nothing like that, just something that they like. So I'll have them bring it in. They could also bring in like a photo or just a drawing of it, that's fine too. And then each kiddo in the class is going to write about their favorite thing and they will get to draw about it. And when I have them write it, I have them use a possessive noun. So I will give them a sentence frame and it goes like this. This is blank's blank, usually is what I do. So like this is Mrs. Ryan's ring, whatever it is, right? So then they can use that same sentence frame and they can make their page of a few of our favorite things by using a possessive noun with an apostrophe with support of this sentence. And then they can also write another sentence about why whatever that thing is that they brought is so special. So it's practice at the sentence level. It's very structured. Again, I like to give the sentence frame, but they're starting to really use it in writing. Another thing, this works really great with nonfiction writing. I may have them do one or both of these little sheets. So it says sentence writing with possessive nouns, and this is a penguin. And it says write 2 or more sentences to describe this penguin. Include a possessive noun in each sentence. For example, you might write the penguin's tail is short. So getting them to use, these little labels to write some sentences about the penguin. And a very similar thing here with the giraffes. Again, this comes from Grammar Alive. Could do it without Grammar Alive even, but they're using possessive nouns with apostrophes to write sentences for nonfiction. So that goes great if you're doing nonfiction. You could even do it if you're not doing nonfiction. And that would be, let's see, the practice stage. And then one last other little thing that you could do. This is typically something that I do with my more advanced students, but we'll do a contractions versus possessive noun sort. Kids tend to confuse the two, or if they don't confuse the two, they don't always know why they're using an apostrophe. And so here I have like a half sheet. Some are contractions, some are possessive nouns. If you want to do this with all your students, you might want to do it as a whole class and really talk about it. Or if you want to just give this to your more advanced learners as a challenge, that could be something that they do independently as well. All right, so moving into our last stage, the apply. Apply is a little bit hard with possessive nouns because You might find that kids don't need to use possessive nouns too frequently in their writing, based upon the level that they're at. Again, Grammar Alive does include really specific suggestions. So like if you're working on narrative writing, like it says, did you know that writers use possessive nouns in stories to tell details? Today I'm going to start a new story. I want to write an interesting beginning, and I think I'll do that by writing details about the setting, blah, blah, blah. It was a cold fall day in our yard. The tree's leaves were scattered on the ground. Can you find the possessive noun I wrote? So you're doing some kind of modeling. Again, in the context of writing, you're taking the genre that you're already working on and you're modeling, and this lesson plan will tell you how to model with different genres. And then maybe the kids are helping you use some possessive nouns with apostrophes in your writing. Eventually, what you want the kids to do is add a possessive noun with an apostrophe to their own writing. And how you do that will really depend upon the type of writing that your kids are working on. You can always give them a sentence frame like we talked about with the other practice activity. But again, this will really guide you in knowing like, okay, if you're doing this type of writing, you can suggest to your kids to do it this way. I like to have my kids add in a possessive noun with the help of a partner because again, this is a little bit challenging. I like to give them that support. And just like the application stage of any grade level, yes, maybe we spend a day or two on this, but we need to keep revisiting it in the future. But now we've laid the foundation, and last but not least, once we've gone through these 3 phases, my kids are then responsible for editing for possessive nouns and using apostrophes correctly. So basically, you'll see in Grammar Alive throughout the year, you're kind of building this checklist, and every time you teach another grammar skill, the checklist grows. So the apostrophe thing is at the bottom. At the beginning of the year, maybe it just like started up here, and then every time you teach a skill that goes on an editing checklist anyway, you add it to the checklist, and then the kids are responsible for it. But again, that doesn't mean you're not going to need to come back to it and revisit it again and again. It's just kind of one of those things. All right, so that was the Kinder first and second grade example week. If you missed this, you're coming in late, feel free to rewatch. Hopefully this will be posted to the page as long as everything goes well. I also have a special link and a little sale code for you that is good through April 2nd, 2021, and that will give you 25% off Grammar Alive. Everything that I was showing you here does come from Grammar Alive, but regardless of if you use these exact materials, like yes, these are ready to go. You can use them as they are. You can integrate them into any reading and writing program, but regardless, you can use that 3-stage model like I talked about. Explore, practice, apply. We're not immediately expecting our kids to apply this stuff to their writing, but over time, that is the goal, and that's what we're working toward, and that's also what's supported by research. Research doesn't support having kids do lots and lots of sentence fixing. What it does support is kids seeing correct examples in context like we've talked about today and also applying it to their writing. All right, well, I hope that was helpful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll be more than happy to come back and answer them. If you have any questions about Grammar Alive, feel free to leave those too. And don't forget that code will work through April 2nd. Thanks so much for watching.